Welcome. The Yin Yoga sequence for this practice will include a series of postures known as hand to big toe poses. And for those of us with normal flexibility, we will probably need a little bit of an extender to allow our hand to reach our toes. And so if you have a yoga strap, then you'll need that for those poses. If you don't have a strap, then use a towel or an old piece of clothing like an old t-shirt. The other postures in the Yin sequence will be half happy baby pose, which I often call inverted dragon, and saddle pose, and we'll end with a Prone Savasana. So some other props that might come in handy are a couple of pillows and some blankets if you have them, or if you have a yoga bolster, then maybe have a yoga bolster. The blocks or books might also be useful during practice. The theme for class is about the largest planet in our solar system, the planet Jupiter. This practice will start with a bit of a warm-up, and then we'll get into the Yin sequence proper. So I'm going to suggest finding a stable seat, but I'll suggest sitting in a pose known as hero's pose, which is not accessible for all of us. So you can try this pose, and if it's not working for you, just come back to a normal seat that you can maintain, and maybe just find your inner ground. Notice the sounds around you, notice your breath. So for hero's pose is basically sitting back in between your heels. So knees are together, feet are kind of wide, and then you sit in between the heels like that. Like I said, like this. Like I said, it requires extreme flexion in the knees and in the ankles to do this posture, which means it's not meant for all of us. So if you're finding yourself in pain and trauma, then it just means find a different seat. Now, if you're almost there, if you were up a little bit higher, you'd be okay. This is where a block or two comes in. So you can take a block, place the block, or some books if you don't have a block. Place the block or books underneath your sit bones, and then you can sit like this, and then just grow your spine nice and neutral. Maybe roll your shoulders back, and you can just sit here for a few breaths. If you would like some shoulder openers while you're sitting here, then find your strap, your yoga strap, or your towel, or your t-shirt, or whatever you've found for the hand to big toe poses. So I'll use my yoga strap here, and I'll sit with my back to you, just to see, so you can see what's going on while I'm sitting in hero's pose. So I'm sitting up on a block. Some of you who are really flexible may not need the block. Some of you might decide you need to go back to a different kind of a seat. So we'll try this shoulder strip. So take the strap in your right arm. Extend your right arm up towards the ceiling. Grow long with your right arm. And then bend the right elbow, bring the right hand behind your head and neck. Extend the left arm out to the side. Really grow long through the left arm. And then bend the left elbow and reach back and crawl the back of your left hand up between your shoulder blades. Some of you might be able to find your hands, but if you can't, then grab the strap, the t-shirt, the towel. Spider walk your fingers as close together as you can until you're feeling a lot of lovely oomph in the shoulders here. And then try to point that right elbow up towards the ceiling, left elbow tries to point down towards the ground. Spine tries to maintain its nice neutral position. That means you might have to tone a little bit through your core here. And then maybe stay here for one more breath. So one long, gentle breath, one big inhale, one big exhale. And then you can go ahead and release. Shake your arms out if that really was kind of tough on your shoulders. We do the other side now. So strap, towel goes in the other hand. Raise that left arm up towards the ceiling, and then bend the left elbow, bring the left hand behind the head and the neck. Right arm reaches out to the side, grow long here, and then bend the right elbow and walk the right hand up between the shoulder blades. Find the strap or find your hands here. And then grow that left elbow long up towards the ceiling. Right elbow tries to point down towards the ground. And then bring a little bit of stability back to your torso here. And just notice the stuck places here for one long breath. And breathe into those tight places. See if they can soften. And then go ahead and release the strap. We've been sitting here in hero's pose for quite a bit. So when you're coming out of this posture, be slow and gentle with yourself. Come up and out. Come to table pose. So from table pose, from all fours, make your way all the way onto your belly. We'll do a little bit of active back bending here. We'll do a little bit of locust cycling. So this is a yang exercise. So feet are out behind you. See if you can draw your legs together. Maybe the big toes touch. Maybe slightly tone through the legs here. And the front of the pelvic bone is grounding through the floor. And then arms are extended alongside your torso with your hands just kind of facing up. And then on your next inhale and see if you can use the muscles in the back of your torso to try and lift your upper torso up off of the floor. So this is called locust pose here. Maybe stay here for a breath. Some of us might not go anywhere. Some of us just feel like we're trying to lift up. Maybe some of us go up really far. Doesn't really matter, as long as you're toning through the back muscles and then very gently lower yourself back down to the ground. Take a resting breath or two. We'll do this 2 more times. So you can do that exercise again, or you can add a next step to it. And the next step is interlace your fingers behind your back, roll your shoulders back, extend your arms towards your heels. And then inhale, lift your heart up off of the floor and extend your hands back towards your feet here, maybe a little bit up here. And then slowly lower, release everything again. A couple resting breaths here. So you can either do the first style, the second style, or you can try the third style of locust pose here on the last try. The third style is arms are interlaced and extended back. As you inhale, lift your heart up off the floor. Tone through your legs and see if you can lift your feet and your legs up off of the floor. Maintain this for a breath. And then very gently lower everything back to the ground. Maybe a couple resting breaths here. But at some point, we're coming back to table pose. So root your hands and your arms into the floor and bring yourself slowly back up onto hands and knees. Now we'll try just a little bit of balancing here. Just to wake up the core before we put it back to sleep with some yin here. So on hands and knees, take your right shin and move the right shin out to the right at an angle, and then root through this right shin and right top of the right foot. Root through the right hand and then turn your torso to the left. So I'm going to turn away from you. As I do so, extend your left leg out and root the left foot into the floor so that it's in line with the right knee and the right hand. Left hand can come to your hip. And then maybe shift your hip forward so it's over this right knee here. See how this is feeling? This is pretty wobbly. Just stay here and notice the micro muscles working here. Stage number 2 is find the balance by just lifting that back leg up off of the floor. Bring it parallel to your torso. Maybe tone through that leg so it feels nice and stable here. And then if you want to, you can bring that left arm up towards the ceiling. If you're wanting to challenge your balance, maybe look up towards the ceiling. But if that's too much of a challenge, just look straight or down at the ground. And then put the leg down, put the hand down, come to table pose. All that on the other side now. So take the left shin, move the left shin out to the left a little bit. Root through the left hand and the top of the left foot. Rotate your torso to the right, extend the right arm, leg out, and root the right foot into the ground. Shift the hips over the left knee, and this might be as far as you go, so you can stay here. If you feel well rooted in that back knee, then lift the right leg up. See how this feels. Maybe the right arm goes up. And you can gaze up towards the ceiling or down at the ground. When you're ready, slowly bring that foot down, bring the hand down, come back to table pose here. And then from here, we'll go ahead and move into the first yin postures. So the next series of yin postures will be hand to big toe poses that where the residing time will be about 2 minutes per pose, which is a little bit shorter than the 3 to 4 minutes that we're normally holding postures in these yin sequences. And the reason that is we might have to hold the strap with our arms, and that takes muscular strength. So find your strap or t-shirt or towel that you're using here. And then go ahead and lay back on the floor. Legs initially extended here. Take your strap, bend the right knee, draw the right knee into your torso. Wrap the strap around your right foot, bottom of your right foot. Different places on the foot might feel better or worse to you. Find the place that feels the best to you. I'm going to put my strap kind of pretty much center of my foot. And then extend the right leg straight. Clasp the strap with both hands. And then slowly raise the right leg up towards the ceiling until you're feeling something. So in yin, we're moving by feel. So you're not so much interested in if this leg is perfectly straight. If you'll notice, my leg is not perfectly straight, but it's as straight as it goes for me here. And you just raise it as high as you go until it stops due to sensation or pressure or stuckness or tightness or whatever your word for it is. So that's the establishing of your edge here. And whenever you start to feel something running up that's kind of telling you to stop, that's running up the backside of this leg somewhere. That's your edge, and that's where you stay. It's not pain. It's not injury. It's not trauma. It's just where you're feeling something. And then stay here. And this is where you stay. If you're not feeling anything, you bring the leg up further. If you're feeling too much, you back it off here. So we're trying to keep the muscles softened in the legs and the hips. It's yang arm work up in the arms here. So our arms, a lot of us, we actually have to work hard to maintain the position with our arms. So our arms aren't practicing yin, our arms are practicing yang here as our leg is in a yin state. So the 3 principles of yin are find your edge. That's a place where things stop but not painful. The second one is stillness. Stillness means we stay, we reside for a long period of time, and that long period of time is the third part of the yin work, is stay long enough so that the connective tissue can feel the length, can feel the traction, the light traction for a while. So we've been here for about a minute. We'll stay here for about a minute more. If you're in this pose, just stay here. I want to show you a trick if you happen to have a very long specialized yoga strap. So if you decide you want to stay for a longer time, you can. So I happen to have one of these here, and you can make a loop that holds out of it. If your arms get tired doing this exercise, this is a good thing to try. So you need a strap that's long enough for you. And I've got a strap here that I can wrap around my torso. So notice I've taken this big loop of this strap. I wrap it around right underneath my armpits, upper torso here. And then the other end goes around the foot that I've got in this posture. And then I tighten up the strap so that I no longer have to hold on to the strap. So now my arms are relaxed and I can go into a total yin attitude. Upper body doesn't have to be working hard to hold things in place. If I need a little bit more oomph in my leg, I just adjust the strap. I need a little bit less oomph, I just back the strap off here so I can find what's appropriate. And I could actually stay here for 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes if I wanted to, rather than 2 minutes, but we've been here for a good long 2 minutes. So we're moving to the next posture. And the next posture is to take this right leg and to extend it out to the right, to open up and externally rotate it out to the right side. So I'll start using this strap around my torso. I've got to play around with it and adjust it a little bit. Notice that with this strap around my torso, I can now just sit here, or just lie here without any arm work here. And then we'll just hold this for another 2 minutes. Again, we might have to adjust it. Maybe the leg needs to go higher to feel something, maybe not so high. But we're opening up through this right hip socket here. So left leg is staying on the floor, spine is staying neutral here. And I'll switch back to the smaller strap, just because that's probably what most people are doing, since this is a specialized strap that I had to order to work for me. So if you're using a towel or t-shirt or a smaller strap, then you're probably having to hold on to it with that right arm. The left arm can be out like an outrigger position here. And we have maybe another minute to go here. So notice what you're feeling in this leg and in this hip. And it's easy to adjust because you use your arm to adjust. If you're not feeling anything, maybe foot goes closer to the ground. By the way, if your leg is floating, you can always stuff props under that leg so it can have something to rest on. Maybe your leg makes it all the way to the ground. Maybe it's not feeling anything, so you move that foot up. So you're trying to find that edge here. And you're noticing what your mind is doing, what your breath is doing. If you like move into a position where your mind just goes to 1,000 miles an hour and your breath gets short and choppy. Maybe it's saying something. Maybe it's saying that you're going a little bit too deep into the posture. But in other words, you have to learn how to be the judge of where you think your edge is today, and it changes considerably. So we're done with this orientation. So on your next inhale, maybe use the inhale to bring that right leg back up to center. Now we're coming into a spinal twist. So switch hands with the strap. Strap goes into the left hand. The right leg is now going to go over to the left into a twist. So maybe shift your hips over to the right a little bit. Some of you might find it easier to twist, and then gently lower the right leg over to the left until it stops. Now for a lot of us it might float, but for a lot of us maybe it makes it to the ground. Maybe you have to adjust the strap. Melt your upper body back, because we're trying to get the spinal twist here. It's not just about the legs and the hips in this last orientation. We're actually trying to get a little bit of a twist in the spine. So this right shoulder melts back, and you can keep the head neutral. If it's okay with the neck, you can turn your head away from the leg here. And then we're here for a couple more minutes. So check in with your breath, your mental state, your physical sensations, and see if they're all in a good place, a good edge here. And a few breaths here. So about 5 more breaths on this side. And then on your next inhale, and bring that leg all the way back up. Maybe pull it in just for a moment, and then go ahead and release. Maybe extend the right leg alongside the left leg, grow both legs long, and just see if there's one leg that feels longer than the other leg here. Just for another breath or two. Before we do the left leg, so the right leg is done. Good, that was good work, right leg. Left leg is next, but before you do that, maybe there's some gentle movement you want to do to just work some kinks out of all that motion. So you can do reclined windshield wipers, where knees are bent, feet are on the floor, wide apart, and then you just bob the knees gently back and forth here. When you're feeling motivated and ready to do the left side, and then we'll do the left side here. So right leg extends long on the floor. Bend the left knee in, and then wrap your arm extender around the left leg. Extend the left leg till it's as straight as you can get it. And then clasp the strap with both hands and start moving that leg up to its edge. And then we'll stay here for a couple of minutes in this first orientation. By the way, if you have a lot of flexibility, it's probably obvious that you can just reach up with your hand and grab your toe, thus the name hand to big toe pose. And you don't need a strap to do this posture here. So I'd like to talk about the planet Jupiter in our solar system. So the inner planets, the ones that are closest to the sun, they're all small and rocky. That includes the Earth. We might have a little bit of an atmosphere, but what characterizes them is they're mainly these rocky, metallic iron core type planets here. When you get farther out into the solar system, you get into the realm known as the gas giants that are predominantly giant gas balls. They might have a rocky core, but it's hard for scientists to ever discern that because they're so big and that core would be buried under tens of thousands of miles of gas and liquid before we'd actually get there. So the planet after the small terrestrial planets is actually Jupiter. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system, and that's the most profound characteristic feature of this next planet of Jupiter is its size. It's huge compared to all the other planets. It's bigger than any other planet. Not only is it bigger, it weighs more than all of the other planets combined. In fact, it weighs more than twice all of the other planets combined. So it weighs way more than Saturn. Even though Saturn seems big, Saturn actually is not even close in size to Jupiter. Jupiter has as much mass as 318 Earths. That's how massive it is. And because it's so massive, it has a huge gravitational influence. All the other goings on in the solar system, the only thing that has more gravitational influence is the sun itself. Jupiter has a huge influence over the orbits of the other planets. The other planets are actually affected by the gravity of this huge planet. One more breath here. And then take the strap in your left hand. And then slowly lower the left leg out to the left. So you're opening up through this left hip socket, externally rotating this left leg. And again, if the leg floats and it doesn't feel good to float, then stick a block or a bolster or a pillow or some blankets underneath that leg to stabilize it here. The right arm can come out to the right, maybe as a little bit of an outrigger here. And then you just pull on that strap to adjust where that leg is until you find your new edge here. And then we'll stay here a couple minutes. Now the planets initially got named after Roman gods and goddesses in ancient times, in ancient Greece, in ancient Rome. That's the planet Jupiter is named after the head of the Roman gods, the supreme Roman god, whose name was actually Jupiter. In ancient Romans borrowed their gods and goddesses from the Greek gods and goddesses. The Greek name for Jupiter is Zeus. So, in a way, even though the planets appeared just as wandering stars to the ancient ones, they didn't really know the real characteristics. All they knew is these were stars that didn't behave like other stars. They tended to wander along a path close to the path the sun seemed to appear to take among the stars. And they called them wandering stars or wanderers. By the way, the word planet means actually wanderer in Greek. That's where we get the name planet from. It's a wandering star. And Jupiter was another one of these very bright wandering stars. It was In fact, it's the third brightest object in the night sky after the moon and after Venus. So it's very bright and it's very steady in its motion. Because it's so bright and steady, the Greeks and the Romans decided to designate it after the supreme god, after Jupiter. In a certain sense, they got this right, because now we know it's the most massive planet in our solar system. And so it ended up just by accident getting appropriately named by the ancient people here. So 2 more breaths here on this side. When you get done with that second breath, maybe use the next inhale to motivate yourself to get that leg all the way up to straight here. Switch hands with the strap, and now we're coming to that spinal twist again. So maybe inch your hips over to the left a little bit, and then slowly guide that left leg over to the left so that your left hip is stacked on top of your right hip, so that your spine is in a twist. Left shoulder is oozing back towards the left here. Head can be neutral, head can turn away and look down that right or left arm. Find your shape, find your pose here. And then we'll stay here. A couple more minutes on this side here. Find your breath. Find your calm. See if there's muscles. You'll notice muscle tension and just pressure. See if the muscle tension can soften with breath here. So after a lot of investigation, particularly when we invented the telescope, we realized that Jupiter was kind of its own little solar system in and of itself. So not only was it huge, it had these colorful bands of clouds in its cloud tops. And it had 4 large moons. Galileo was the first guy who saw these moons, and so that's why they're called the Galilean moons. And all 4 of these moons are approximately the size of our own moon. Actually, 3 of them are slightly bigger than our own moon. In fact, the largest one is actually larger than Mercury. That's Ganymede, and then Callisto, Io, which is a volcanic planet, and then Europa, which is an ice-covered planet, which incidentally might have oceans of water underneath all of that ice. Those make up the 4 major moons, and then Jupiter has more than 80 smaller moons orbiting it and counting. We think there might be over 100, but so far we're in the 80s is the number of moons we've actually seen and discovered studying Jupiter. Jupiter also has a thin ring, just like Saturn, running around, although the composition is slightly different. The rings around Saturn are made primarily of ice. They think that the rings around Jupiter are made of rock dust that are coming from small shepherd moons that are keeping those rings in place. Jupiter is a gas giant. It's made up of mostly hydrogen and helium, which it's attracted with its great gravity. Those lighter elements don't stick around when they're on smaller bodies too close to the sun like Earth. But on Jupiter and Saturn, they collect, and that's why they're these huge gassy balls. So you could just say it's a big ball of hydrogen and helium, although there's trace bits of other material here. We're done with this side, so go ahead and bring that leg back up to the center. And then very gently release that leg, and you can maybe do a little bit of movement from top, just to work out the reverberation from all that work here. So that's a pretty good workout for the legs, and we held things for about 2 minutes on the side. If you have the big strap that you can wrap around your body, you can go longer, go 3 or 4 minutes or so. At some point, slowly make your way up to seated, just for a counter pose. There's a lot of work just on our backs here, and it's good to maybe change body orientation every once in a while. So before we get back to lying on our back, find See if you can come to a comfortable cross-legged seat. That might mean sitting up on a little bit of padding. Once there, grow your spine long, and that's an energetic cue to bring your spine to a nice neutral position. And then at some point, gently fold forward as far as you can. You can put your hands on the ground, use your hands and your arms to guide you till you stop. You don't go very far. Maybe you kind of stop here, that's fine. But you just keep going until you stop. This is a counter pose, so we're just here for a couple of breaths. And then when you're ready, slowly bring yourself up. And then when you're ready to get yourself back onto your back. The next couple of yin postures are half happy baby pose, which I call inverted dragon. Here. So you'll make your way onto your back. And then from here, let's start out with knees bent, feet on the floor. Nice neutral spine. Head, neck, torso, shoulders, all comfortable on the ground here. You can even put a pillow underneath your head if you're deciding you need a pillow here. Draw the right knee in. If this is lots of pressure, you can stay here. Otherwise, point the shin so that the bottom of the foot is pointing up towards the ceiling. Grab the shin with your hands. Start oozing this knee out towards the right armpit here. See if you can clasp the foot with both hands. And then maybe pull with your arms to kind of pull this knee, the shin, and the foot down towards the ground as far as it goes here. You can keep the left knee bent, or if you would like to, you can straighten the left leg out to the left here. So this is half happy baby pose. And we'll stay here longer. We'll stay here for three and a half minutes or so. So you're basically moving everything into place to where they stopped, or where you start to feel some stuckness, pressure, traction. That's your edge here. And if this is too much, go back to just maybe hand behind your thigh, like if that knee is hurting, or maybe hand in front of your shin, some kind of modification that's working better for you. If you're wanting something a little bit more extreme, then what I would suggest is put a block or some books underneath your sacrum. So what I mean by that is take a block like this, place it broadways underneath your sacrum, either on the low setting or on the medium setting if you want something really extreme. And then bring the foot in for a happy baby pose here. Maybe the left leg doesn't even make it to the ground here. So that's to get some extra traction in the psoas on the opposite leg here. So that's just an alternative that you can try here. Otherwise, this is also a modified version of dragon pose. So if you really love dragon and you'd rather do dragon pose, you can just go ahead and switch and do that, although I'm not going to demonstrate it here. It'll gets demonstrated in a lot of yin videos here. So we'll just stay here for another minute and a half or so, if that's appropriate. Although you always have the power and the permission to come out of a posture early if you need to. I'm just kind of making up times here to try and stay in postures so that we can reside in them for a few minutes. So getting back to Jupiter, hydrogen and helium are basically colorless, but when we observe Jupiter, it has colorful bands, and that's because there's traces of other gases in the atmosphere. So there's water ices and there's ammonia ices that kind of make the cloud tops that we see on Jupiter. And indeed, they're kind of convecting due to the heating and the cooling and the movement of the clouds. And that dredges up a very slight amount of organic matter that tends to be darker. So it makes dark zones and light zones. But all of that are in trace amounts compared to the overwhelming amount of hydrogen and helium. Now, Jupiter might have a rocky metallic core, but we'll never know. The deeper you get into Jupiter, the higher the temperatures and the higher the pressures. In fact, the temperatures and the pressures get so high in Jupiter because it's so huge and because of the gravitational attraction to it. It gets to a point where we can't mimic it in a lab. Any lab apparatus we build can't maintain the temperatures or the pressures seen in, or we think exists deep in the Jupiter atmosphere here. Jupiter, though, does have something moving down there. We think it's metallic hydrogen that's creating a magnetic field. In fact, Jupiter has a very strong magnetic field. It's about 20,000 times stronger than the magnetic field that Earth generates. So you can, because of that, you can easily see it in the radio. The magnetic field kind of flings around free electrons here and there and create a lot of radio waves. One more breath here. And then go ahead and release this. Maybe stretch it out. Maybe bring it up to the ceiling. Maybe point and flex the foot a few times to work out the kink here. Maybe just make movements with that hip joint. And then bend both knees. We've got the other side of this to do now. So feet on the floor, knees bent, and then bring the left knee in, or the other knee if you've done the left knee already. Find the bottom of the foot, or find the back of the thigh, or the shin, or the bottom of the foot, and then pull on that foot to bring that left knee down as far as it goes. Right knee can stay bent, or you can extend the right knee out to the side here. And then we'll reset the clock here for another few minutes on this side of Happy Baby. Check in here at the beginning of the residing and see if you found an appropriate edge. If you're already in pain, then that's too deep. You know that you should back off. If you're already at a desperate edge, that's probably too deep. You need to back off here. And just notice. Because Jupiter has such a strong magnetic field, it has aurora, just like Earth has aurora, or the northern or southern lights. So if you look at the poles on Jupiter, you can often, Voyager and other spacecraft has caught the aurora at the poles on Jupiter. Jupiter also has powerful lightning storms. So in its cloud tops, there's powerful discharges of lightning that are 10,000 times stronger than any of the lightning that we see here on Earth. The Voyager space probe caught this lightning when it was traveling away from Jupiter out to the next planet, out to Saturn. It looked back and looked at the night side of Jupiter and saw these flashes of light in the clouds. It saw this lightning. This is maybe very appropriate for how Jupiter is named, because Jupiter is named after the god of thunder. So Jupiter, the Roman god Jupiter, or the Greek god Zeus, they were known as the thunder gods. They used lightning bolts as part of their toolkit. Turns out in Norway, in Norse mythology, Jupiter got to be associated with the god Thor, who also dealt in lightning bolts. Well, that's one thing the ancients also got right, is Jupiter is definitely a place of thunder and lightning, and far more powerful than anything seen on Earth. Not that they knew about it, but turns out it's true. There is a lot of powerful lightning going on Jupiter here. So about one more minute on this side. We've been here a little over 2 minutes. Maybe that's enough. Maybe you can release, or maybe you're not feeling anything anymore. So you kind of allow your arms to just pull a little bit more. Let that knee kind of ooze a little bit closer to the ground here. since Jupiter is so huge and so big, it played a crucial role in how all the rest of the planets formed. In fact, Jupiter started forming when the sun formed. So by the time the sun stopped forming, Jupiter had already formed. The other planets hadn't formed yet. They were still just debris that was coalescing. But Jupiter had already formed. It was the first planet. So it had an influence on the formation of the other planets, long before the other planets ever existed here. So just one more breath here. And then slowly allow yourself to release that left leg. And then maybe a little bit of gentle yang movement to give that left leg a little bit of a break here. And then when you're ready, maybe some reclined windshield wipers or some other movement here, just to continue. This is a lot of hip and leg work, this sequence, and we don't quite let up yet. We've still got one kind of intense posture left, and that's saddle pose. So roll over to one side, bring yourself up to seated. And if you have a couple of pillows or a bolster, you can substitute some pillows and blankets for this bolster, but I'm just going to use the bolster here for saddle pose. So saddle pose starts out a little bit like the hero's pose that we did at the beginning of class here. So we sit back on or in between the heels. So this is the beginning of saddle pose. Pick whichever one is more comfortable. Now if you can't sit this way, you're obviously not going to do saddle. You can do Sphinx instead. If you know Sphinx, you can do Sphinx. I'll demonstrate Sphinx here in a second, but I'll finish demonstrating saddle here. From here, slowly begin to lower your torso back. So you're moving slowly so that you stop when you feel like you need to stop. You can take the blanket, pillows, bolsters, kind of get them up along the back side of your hip here. And then slowly you lower yourself maybe onto the bolster. Maybe one bolster or pillow is enough so you get several. Or you can just hang out on your hands here if you're extra flexible. Maybe you don't even need a bolster. Maybe you can make it all the way onto the ground. So this is saddle. Knees can be off the floor. They can be wide, as long as they're not in pain. So they don't have to be on the floor. If they're on the floor, that's fine too. So you're finding your shape. You're just not going for pain. Now there's probably a lot of intensity in the fronts of the thighs and maybe the low back. But we're not trying to injure our knees or our ankles here. And we'll go here for about 3 minutes or so. I'm going to just demonstrate Sphinx quickly here. So if you need a reminder of what Sphinx is, this is Sphinx, it's a simple back bend where you lay on your belly, elbows underneath your shoulders, because essentially saddle pose is a type of a back bend, and so is Sphinx. So if saddle doesn't work for your knees or your ankles, then you can just try Sphinx. Head can hang, head can be up, head can be resting on a prop in Sphinx here. Otherwise, we'll just reside here in saddle. So those of you who know a little bit how the solar system is organized will remember that there's a belt of asteroids between Mars and Jupiter. So the planets out from the sun are Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, an asteroid belt, which is a debris belt, and then Jupiter. So the speculation is that debris belt might have formed into a planet itself, but it was too close to Jupiter, and it was not allowed because of Jupiter's immense gravity. It disrupted that debris from ever forming into a planet. So it might not have been a destroyed planet from a collision. It might just have been the leftover debris from a planet that never got formed. Or it could be a destroyed planet too. Jupiter has influenced the orbits of the inner planets. In fact, it's speculated that Jupiter actually got closer to the sun than it is today, and really kind of played around with the orbits of the inner planets for a while before it moved out. The reason it moved out, they speculate, is the only other planet that could possibly influence Jupiter, and that's Saturn. And so it turns out that Jupiter and Saturn are locked in a resonance orbit with each other, because Saturn is the only thing in the solar system large enough to affect Jupiter. Otherwise, Jupiter is the one doing the influencing and the affecting of everybody else's orbit in the solar system. Jupiter also clears out, it's so huge it also clears out debris. It kicks out asteroids and comets out of the solar system. And this is a good thing because it maybe saves a lot of other planets from deadly collisions between comets and other asteroids that would have hit them. But Jupiter knocked them out of the way. This is why I call Jupiter Jove's hammer. Jove is another name for Jupiter, but its influence is so vast that it actually protects. It's actually a protector planet. But it also can actually affect the asteroids and kick them into the inner solar system. So even though it protects us from elements coming in trying to collide with us, it actually can create asteroids that are on a collision course with us. So just one more breath here in saddle pose, and then slowly bring yourself up. And I don't know how you get out of saddle pose. You have to figure that one out yourself. I just say slow, be slow about it, or bring yourself out of Sphinx pose. Now your legs were deeply flexed in saddle pose, so you might want to do a yawn counter pose. Downward facing dog is a nice counter pose for saddle. I like forearm plank, and one of the names for forearm plank is crocodile pose. So come down onto your elbows and then lengthen your legs out, tone through your legs and your core, and see if you can lift your knees up off of the floor. This is a yang posture. There has to be intense muscle engagement to maintain this. So you can just stay here for a couple of breaths, but it helps to work out the stagnation in the legs after that long hold in saddle pose here. And then when you get done with that, maybe a few cat and cow poses here. So come back into table, and then we just got done doing a back bend. So maybe cow first, which is another back bend. That might feel good. And then slowly begin to move yourself into cat, which is a forward bend. And just see how this feels now. We normally do cat and cow at the beginning of a yoga practice. Here we're doing it at the end. So move back into cow pose, and then back into cat, maybe a couple more cycles here. And then come back to table. And now we're moving into our final resting pose, and you can pick how you would like to finish and rest in this practice. It can be a traditional Shavasana, your favorite restorative posture, sitting in meditation. I'm going to suggest what I call Prone Savasana. So Prone Savasana just means resting on your belly rather than on your back. And what will be useful for this is if you have a yoga bolster, you can use a yoga bolster. If you don't have a yoga bolster, double up a few pillows and blankets, and then come to lying with your torso on the bolster or blankets, pillows and blankets, but with your head and your neck off of the end so that your head can rest. So you'll just I'll lay my torso on the bolster. My head and neck are far enough off of the edge of the bolster that I can just gently rest my forehead on the ground. And then legs are far enough apart that they feel comfortable. Arms extend out to the other side far enough apart so that they can just rest comfortably. And then you allow yourself to soften and to just sink here. And again, you might have to figure out how to use your pillows to do this posture here. Or if this is not comfortable, then find a different restorative posture or restorative position to spend the final couple of minutes here. We spend a lot of time. The reason why I'm picking this posture is we spent a lot of time already lying on our back. So maybe we'll switch the orientation here. So once you've found your resting position, then melt into it. Become part of it. So soften the tension in your body, particularly your head. So soften your jaw and your tongue. Soften your entire face here. The space between your eyes, your forehead. Let it just soften. Let the thoughts and tension, the mental tensions, just drain away into the floor here. Use your breath to set up this peaceful cycle, this peaceful resonance here. Yet let your thoughts just drift. Let your arms soften, your hands, your fingertips relax. Let your torso soften. So, front of your torso, rib cage, belly, kind of melts into your prop. Hips and glutes soften. Rest of your legs, your ankles, your feet, your toes, all begin to just relax and release. Maybe become aware of your extremities, so the tips of your finger, the tips of your toes, both feet, the crown of your head. Notice your heart center. Notice your breath here. Notice the rise and fall of the back of your torso. Visualize yourself as the planet Jupiter, this regal, noble planet that has kind of the prime spot in the solar system. At some point, begin to deepen your breath. You can begin to make little motions with fingers and with toes. Maybe little motions with your head and your neck. Expand into your arms, into your legs. At some point, maybe gently slide off your bolster or your pillows. Come onto your side, maybe bend your knees. And then just resettle on your side here. Stay here for a few breaths. Cultivate a deep sense of gratitude for your practice and a deep sense of gratitude for you, your unique embodiment. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then when you're ready, slowly bring yourself up. Find a comfortable seat. When you get there, remind yourself of your inner ground. Find a nice neutral spine and bring your hands together at heart center. So I'll end practice with an Om. You can either join in or just listen. The inner light in me honors the inner light in you. Namaste.